We're joined now by Jake Sherman, senior writer for Politico, co-author of the Politico Playbook, again joining us from Washington. And Jake, you heard Democratic Senator Bill Nelson there speaking about Republican Governor Rick Scott's decision, at least thus far, to not extend the voter registration deadline in Florida past next Tuesday, October 11th. It's believed that that would be something of a blow to Democratic efforts in the state. What do you make of it?
I think it's a legitimate point by the Clinton campaign. What happens is basically there's a lot of obviously registration efforts leading up to Election Day, but in the final days you kind of see a big spike. Tens of thousands of people might actually register to vote in those last days before the deadline. Now, Hillary Clinton is somewhat lucky that she's had ground efforts in the state for many months, has 50-something offices in the state of Florida, but she has a point, and but Rick Scott also says, listen, there's been plenty of time to get out to the polls to register, and we're just not going to extend this any further. Listen, I don't know that it's a partisan move by Scott. If you start making exceptions like this, there's obviously consequences on the other end for in years to come. But listen, the Clinton campaign has absolutely the right to ask for it and the right to be upset that he's not doing it.
Well, if nothing else, we have precedent set that a hurricane occurring in an election cycle gets politicized, as does everything else. We saw it in 2012. Hurricane Sandy sidelined Mitt Romney and also allowed Americans to watch an incumbent president work hand in hand across the aisle. This time it was President Obama with Chris Christie. While that did happen closer to the actual election, how else might this storm impact this race?
Well, listen, Florida is tight as a tick, as they say, right? And it's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to get down to Florida to campaign. So you have a very strange dynamic, in a sense, not only in Florida, but around the country. The race, which is, Hillary Clinton is generally up by 4 to 6 points nationwide. The race is really frozen, and attention's going to be on this storm, depending on the severity. You're going to have the debate Sunday night, and obviously tens of millions of people are going to tune in. But the race, in a sense, is frozen in Florida. You can't. No surrogates are going down. Ivanka Trump had to cancel an event this week because of the storm. So this is very bizarre, very strange. And also, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump aren't elected officials. So you can't really have that Barack Obama moment where one of them is doing something kind of extraordinary and interesting leading up to the election.
I'm also struck by the fact that the impact, really, of free media upon the Trump campaign. You mentioned the 50-some offices there in Florida that the Clinton campaign has. Really, it has been believed by the Trump campaign rather proudly that free media has doubled as ground game for Donald Trump to this point. And for the last 48 hours, and perhaps for the next 48, very little time will be spent in this sphere discussing the GOP nominee.
I just think that to equate ground game to being on television is a dangerous thing to do. I don't understand that. What you saw the Clinton campaign saying in the last couple of days, Robbie Mook, the campaign manager, is that they actually think the race might be not wrapped up, but several states might be close to wrapped up in this early voting period. So the Clinton campaign, which has extensive ground operations in states like North Carolina and across the country, they actually believe they'll get a good sense of where the race really is in these states in weeks before Election Day. So I don't really understand the Trump campaign's theory of the case on that. Ground game is kind of one of the essentials leading up to Election Day. And I'm sure if I'm wrong and Donald Trump wins, I'll see this clip played back to me a million times. But this is like one of the fundamentals, right? Like there's in playoff baseball, you got to hit, you got to field, you got to have good starting pitching. I don't understand how you don't have ground game in a national election.
Yeah, thus far we've also seen the need for a lights-out bullpen. Another segment for another time, though, Jake. So the debate will go on. It's also important to have these final moments for both candidates in St. Louis on Sunday. Considering the polling that we've seen, considering the week plus that Donald Trump had at least up to the vice presidential debate, is Sunday in St. Louis make or break for Donald Trump?
I don't know if it's make or break, but listen, you have only a certain number of turning points, of actual reset moments in the campaign. And this is certainly one of them. The dynamics will be very interesting. This is not a debate where they're standing at podiums or sitting at a table. They're able to move around the room. There's 2 stools. It's a town hall debate. You will see people ask questions. You'll see physical reactions. Remember, George H.W. Bush got in trouble for looking at his watch, seemingly bored during a town hall debate just like this 20-something years ago. So this is an incredibly important moment. I don't know if it's make or break, but last night in New Hampshire, Donald Trump's campaign said he was doing kind of a dry run for this town hall format, and what he did was take questions for 30 minutes from hand-picked people in the audience, hosted by a conservative radio host. So there's no evidence. I'm not saying Donald Trump isn't preparing differently. There's no public evidence that he's preparing any differently.
Well, at that appearance, I can actually say that Donald Trump himself did say, "Forget debate prep," quote, end quote. So perhaps more of the same.
Practice. I'm talking about practice.
Practice.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about practice. Politico's Jake Sherman, colonial in spirit, Olympian in footwear today. Hit the old Twitter, folks, if you want to see him. They're quite a pair of kicks. Jake, as always, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.